Hi, Darpan.
Hello, Dr.
Hello.
Taranjeet.
Hi, Darpan. Good
Ve-
evening.
Very good
Namaste.
evening to you.
Yes. We have Dr. Florencio also as well with us, and Dr. Andrew texted that he's going to be late by a few minutes. So, since this is going to be a long session, let's start on time.
Yes, definitely.
Okay. So, at the beginning of this session, I would like to extend my warm welcome and gratitude to all the participants of today, the attendees who have taken their time and come here and listen to the experts on TMD. Um, Myself, Dr. Taranjeet Kaur, would like to welcome you all wholeheartedly on this wonderful session. And I hope and wish that all of you will have great time listening to our experts today. Now, to begin with, as we can all of us 20 years back when I started my journey into the specialty of oral and maxillofacial surgery, temporomandibular joints were not part of our curriculum, and we were not really taught so much about this particular condition. The incidence rate of our patients was also not so high as I remember and recollect from my those days. But as I started practicing maxillofacial surgery and dentistry, I started seeing this condition in my clinical practice, and I realized that it is such an mysterious, enigmatic condition, and it generally had this kind of an expression, which I feel even today a lot of our physicians and consultants face this kind of frustration, a hair pulling frustration, which a lot of us face when it comes to diagnosing and treating these patients. In fact, in my experience, I have even seen that as soon as we somewhere conclude that the patient might be having TMD, most of my colleagues just shy away and look for some other things to do rather than finding solutions for these patients. And when these patients come to us, more or less they have exhausted all the other options in the medical market, if I may say so, from neurosurgeons to orthopedic surgeons to physicians to ENT surgeons. So by the time they come to us, they're fairly hopeless and helpless. And we are practically their last resort. Now, if we have this level of frustration which we see in ourselves, where do these patients go? And that was my reason for dwelling deeper into this condition, and through and it has been in so many years. Most of my understanding of PMDs has been this evidence-based literature. There were hardly any concrete trainings or for at least in India, I'm talking more about India. Of course, the Western world, this phenomena was much better researched and discussed about, but in India, we are just getting footage into this phenomenon. So the main aim of today's session is to take the journey of our physician from frustration to compassion, so that through learning and understanding of this phenomenon, we can extend our knowledge, and through our knowledge, we can extend treatment and compassion to our patients and render them care which they very much deserve and which they really look forward to and hope to get from us by the time they reach us. Thank you so much once again for being with me. And with this introduction, I would like to now invite our first speaker of the evening, Dr. Darpan. But before I start, I have amazing experts. These gentlemen have been very, very generous with their support to TK Live, and I have no words to express how I feel. So it has been an amazing journey to bring up this session to all of you. And I really hope that it would be fruitful endeavor for all of you today evening. So, Dr. Darpan, a small introduction of Dr. Darpan is a bachelor in dental surgery and master's in oral and maxillofacial surgery from Meenakshi Ammal Dental College and Hospital, Chennai, India. He has diploma of membership in oral and maxillofacial surgery from Royal College of Physicians and Surgeons, Glasgow. He holds postgraduate diploma in hospital management and clinical research. He is also credited with introduction of twin mixed nerve blocks for mandibular anesthesia. Currently, he is serving as a professor and a clinical consultant in Department of Oral and Maxillofacial Surgery at People's University, Bhopal. He is the founder director of TMJ Consultancy, and he has almost 90 national, and international scientific publications to his credit. He holds a first ever Indian patent for temporomandibular joint prosthesis, and he's been awarded with PhD from Meenakshi University, Chennai for his acclaimed research on predictability and feasibility of total alloplastic temporomandibular joint reconstruction using Darpan TM joint prosthesis for patients in Indian subcontinent. So besides the fact that Dr. Darpan has such a beautiful CV, what I would like to extend to all of you is that this session, if at all it is successful as far as numbers and support is concerned, without Dr. Darpan's support, this would not have been possible. So thank you so much, Dr. Darpan, and the virtual stage, which is stream, is all yours.
Thank you, Dr. Taranjeet, for that wonderful introduction. And in fact, it was my pleasure to get associated with TK Live. And when it comes to TMJ and the management strategies, it is our aim from my organization that we give our fullest towards the cause. So that was the reason for this collaboration, and the wonderful person Dr. Taranjeet is. And I am actually privileged and thankful to her for being here on this platform with all of you tonight. So without wasting much time, because we have a long way to go to today evening here in India, I would start the screen share from my end. Actually, my session in particular, when I talk about it, would be a session which will be a prelude to our fellow masters, Dr. Florencio and Dr. Andrew, who would be taking over from my presentation. I named my presentation as Basics to Yonder, considering we were at a very basic levels in temporomandibular joint management strategies, and now somewhere we are on the way in between. So I call it Yonder, somewhere heading towards a solid destination. But yes, we need to work a lot harder towards this. Now, I am thankful to Dr. Nehal, who has joined us as the moderator for the day. Dr. Florencio, definitely he would take us through the journey of minimally invasive surgeries, joining us from Spain, and Dr. Andrew, who is well known and is a TJR surgeon and joint surgeon from Nottingham, UK. Now, I am joining all of you. My practice area basically is Bhopal, which is in a kind of heart of the country India, and we have a lot of lakes here. The airport, in case I can invite all of you at this platform, it is called Raja Bhoj Airport, and this is the statue of Raja Bhoj, where we have a upper lake and he stands in between that. So welcome from Bhopal, and then jumping on quickly to what is the agenda for today. Now when I talk about temporomandibular joint in particular, this was a very widely acclaimed study which says that when we generally pick up individuals from public in a place which is disease free, say a mall, a movie theater, a classroom, you would eventually find out and pick up that 12% of general population is affected with some or the other level of disorder with temporomandibular joint disease. Now they do recognize themselves, they have a problem. That is where they give you the history of having a mild click, or maybe on and off episodes of locking, or any such form of the disorder in a milder to a more severe form which they usually suffer from, and they do not consult a physician or an expert or a surgeon for their problem for a very long periods of time. Now also the second factor is that it is documented that this problem's got strong directions towards female predilection. Now we'll see eventually during the course of this presentation that what is required when this is such a widespread or a prevalent problem. We understand that a lot of people need help. Now if someone reports to a physician and a surgeon to get some kind of relief or to get the treatment for his temporomandibular joint disorder, usually in most of the cases they're either referred to an otolaryngologist or a ENT surgeon, where they are usually confused regarding the diagnosis of the problem or the pain, because most of these TMDs have associated ear related symptoms. In a study which was recently published in 2021, you would see that you have even the percentage as large as 72% of TMD patients who suffer from ear symptoms. Now if they are not referred to an ENT specialist, eventually they would be referred to a pain specialist or a neurologist. Once they are referred to a neurologist or a pain specialist, they would think in terms of pain of neuralgic origin. Now if we go by, I take an example of trigeminal neuralgia. You have defined criteria for it. Let's go by SWEET. If SWEET says that pain is paroxysmal, TMD is ruled out. And if we go with the criteria by International Headache Society, you see that the last point is not attributed to other disorders. When they say not attributed to other disorders, you should have ruled out TMD before you come to the diagnosis of neuralgia. So this is how it goes. If the person actually is identified with a problem with temporomandibular joint, and eventually you see that the patient is referred to a temporomandibular joint related specialist, you would see that now we have a problem of these specialists, a group treating occlusion, a group concentrating on bone, a group concentrating on muscle related pain, a group concentrating on neural levels of or neural origin of pain associated with temporomandibular joint. We need a wholesome treatment. We do not need individualized approach for different type of tissues. If it is not this group, then you would see some TMD specialists who are specialized in medical management of the TMDs. Some are specialized in a conservative, more conservative kind of occlusal therapy, like splint or the occlusal appliance therapy. You have few set of specialists who are at par and do excellent work with arthrosynthesis, so they would prefer that. Some would prefer Scopy at the centers where this facility is available. Last but not the least, a group of people who want to learn and practice total joint replacement therapy, they would direct most of their energy and treatment of such patients towards joint replacement therapies. So again, this may not be correct, and we need a holistic approach to manage such patients, where a TMD specialist should be trained to diagnose the problem right, and also to direct towards the right kind of treatment. I'm not saying that all TMD specialists needs to be specialists with maybe spleen therapy, arthrosynthesis, Scopy or joint replacement therapies, but they should be a good traffic police who directs to the right center, right type of treatment, and advises the patient right. Now, suppose we think in terms of a problem which is seen onto your screen. You see that you have a disc in the temporomandibular joint, which is in this case anteriorly displaced, and when patients trying to open the mouth, you would see that the disc jumps back onto the condylar head, and the condition is labeled as disc displacement with reduction. Now you have another condition which is seen on your screens. Now you would see that you have a condylar head which is trying to move and trying to translate anteriorly, but you have a disc which is holding on the movement of the condylar head, or is lying in front of the head and it's not reducing. Now you have a problem which is labeled as disc displacement without reduction here. Now whether this is this or a problem like this, where joint translates much anterior in its space beyond its normal physiological limits, all of these set of patients, a group of patients, eventually would come to you with a symptom, the pain. Now when they come to you with the pain and they report to a service provider, as a general mindset, either you would bombard the patient. I'm not talking about every one of us, but most of us would bombard the patients with a lot of NSAIDs, muscle relaxants for quite a long time, and patient would definitely get symptomatic relief at that point of time, considering the mechanism of these medication, but we're really not treating the problem. We would have heard of spleen therapies or occlusal therapies, and eventually they would be put on some kind of XYZ splint. A TENS is very widely acclaimed therapy for pain, and eventually they would be put on some kind of TENS therapy or physiotherapy. And now in recent times you have T-scan and disocclusion time reduction therapy using T-scan and EMG guidance. So eventually, where facilities are available, patients are directed towards these kind of therapies, irrespective of the etiology, cause, and the pathogenesis and the pathology which is affecting the joint. These are the common type of mixed bag of treatment modalities which is bombarded to any such patient. When nothing works, usually the patient is directed or sent to a specialist who is little specialized with minimal invasive surgeries, because directly patients usually do not agree for any major surgical workup. Now, when we bombard the same mixture of therapies to each and every patient without actually establishing the proper diagnosis, we feel that TMJs are a problem, or TMDs in particular are a problem, and we consider thinking or start thinking TMJ problems as a burden like this. Now, to put it very simple, let us just revise. TMJ, yes, it is a complicated joint. It's got a disc in between, a cartilaginous disc. You have two articular surfaces. One is formed by the mandibular bone, the other is formed by the temporal bone, and eventually the disc divides the entire system into two compartments, the superior compartment and the inferior compartment, and the entire system functions with dynamics which is little intricate. You have initial rotation. If you observe this condyle rotating across the red dot, eventually for initial mouth opening, and then it has to move forward or translate anteriorly to give you complete or good mouth opening. So there is a combination of mechanics, a lot of structures involved, and you have the disc which has to follow the condylar head to keep a padding between the bony surfaces, and so forth and so on. When so much is happening, apart from that, the entire system has to be controlled by a lot of musculature around. You have dentition to limit the closure and guidance towards the closure and opening. So when all this is happening, you have numerous anatomical structures and the function which is happening, which has to balance itself and is and should be in a lot of harmony. Now when we talk about just the movement, for that matter, you would see that the lower joint compartment gives you the rotational kind of movement. Initial rotation happens only in the lower compartment between the disc and the condylar head, and when eventually the condyle translates anteriorly, entire disc and condylar complex with the aid of the lateral pterygoid muscle should be pulled forward so that the disc and the condylar head moves in synchrony towards anterior direction. So again, complexities increase with such dynamics happening within the joint. But when in general we talk about the majority of patients who initially report to you with the problem of TMDs with symptom, you would see that either it goes towards this path of internal derangement towards your left, or this path of some kind of subluxation disorder towards your right. So basically, in initial stages, when patient reports to you with some kind of a symptomatic joint, there are n number of TMD problems, there are n number of pathologies that can affect the temporomandibular joint. I'm just talking about the mass which makes towards or contributes towards this problem. So you have basically two differential diagnoses which you can keep in your mind. Apart from that, you should be in a position to diagnose the less common ones too. Now if we start talking about internal derangement, just look at the movement of a normal joint. The normal joint, as I already discussed, it has to have a slight rotation initially, then the entire disc in the condylar complex has to translate forward and should work in synchrony with the other side joint. Now when this does not happen, when you have a conflict between the movement of the disc and the condyle along with the temporal surface, you have the derangement of structures moving. Now at some point of this motion, if the disc can occupy its position which it's supposed to occupy, you call this a situation with this displacement with reduction, which is reduces back to its original or normal position. Now if this condition progresses and you have a condition where you see on to the right of your screen where the disc tries to function but cannot occupy the position it's supposed to be and lies in more of an intromedial in most of the cases, but you do have other displacements too. But if it is stuck there, it cannot climb back to its original position, you have a condition called disc displacement without reduction. What you would see in a radiograph is, if it is chronic, you, because of the pull of the lateral pterygoid, as you see onto your left of your screen, you would see a kind of lipping effect at the condylar head. More than that, because it is more of a soft tissue related problem, you would not have any diagnosis on a radiograph. But yes, over a long period of time you would have some amount of lipping because of the pull of the lateral pterygoid muscle. Eventually what is required is you order an MRI, which should be both in closed mouth position and open mouth position for the patient. We are able to diagnose the disc movement and the position of the disc in both open, partially open and closed mouth ideally. Now this is important point that when you suspect a soft tissue problem, MRI is the imaging modality of choice. Now when we move on to hypermobility disorders, you see that either the problem is with one of the ligaments which contribute towards the composition of this joint, or the musculature which contributes to the movement of this joint, or otherwise there is problem with the bony anatomy, that it has eroded over a period of time or has adapted to subluxation mobility for a patient. Now this is the problem what happens in a patient with subluxation. You look at the stretch, the retrodiscal area has to suffer when the condyle translates much ahead or anterior to its normal physiological ranges. Now when this happens, obviously this radiograph, which is otherwise called as open close mite tomogram, a simplest radiograph, would give you some idea on what is happening within the joint, provided during the radiography you have requested the patient to have complete range of full mouth opening. Now considering these two common problems, I just took example of these two most common problems that can affect the joint. We all at instances are in dilemma what to do and when to stop thinking of conservative treatment, or is it the mainstay? Is there a role of surgery for TMDs like this? Let me quote our counterparts from Australia. Dr. Demetrolis, a well-known oral surgeon there, oral maxillofacial surgeon there, he's put up a classification based on Wilkie's classification, which is otherwise commonly followed, and divided the entire spectrum of TMDs into 5 categories. Let us just take his steps to understand. Maybe you want to follow this classification or you do not want to follow. You must be comfortable with your own set of system to diagnose patients, but let us follow for training purpose. Let us follow this classification and move ahead during this course of presentation. Now it's divided the entire classification system into 4 components, that is clinical presentation, radiological findings, diagnosis and treatment. In case someone will go back and refer, because we'll be going very fast on this because we have limitation on time and we need to move on with the presentation. Please go on with IJMS 2013 for this classification. Now he says category 1 patients who report to you will eventually have no abnormality on imaging. Only problem will be pain. Most probably these patients fall in the category of myogenic pain related to TMDs, and conservative modalities including medication and splint therapy or occlusal therapy has got a major role in this set of patients. When we go ahead to a little severe conditions, then first one, category 2 patients, where you take imaging, patient has a complaint of a click or locking, and then eventually you diagnose the patient as this displacement
I
what
think
he
there's a
suggests.
disruption. Yeah. Okay. Please continue, Dr. Durban.
What is suggested at this stage is that you intervene. You do not sit back and watch, you intervene. What is further progression of the disease? You see this displacement without reduction in imaging, you have to intervene a little more aggressively. Category 4 patients, we've seen that there are gross bony changes like osteophytes, the condylar resorptive changes, alteration in the bony anatomy. Definitely you have to intervene even more aggressively. Category 5 patients, where the entire joint structure is defunct, deformed, and you cannot do anything to the joint, you have to definitely go ahead with in terms of rehabilitation of the joint, including the TJR therapies which are currently in practice. So category 1, kind of normal TMJ, intervene with medical management and conservative therapies. Category 2 patients, where the problem has started, maybe in the initial stages you want to be a little conservative, but in case there's a problem, patient symptomatic, please intervene at the right time to prevent progression of these changes. Further ahead, definitely you need to intervene in all the cases. Now splint therapies, physiotherapies, and other conservative modalities are accessory mode of treatments from category 3 to 5. Definitely that would be the in case I take a vote that the people who are practicing TMDs, this would be the common opinion among all of us now. So category 1, definitely no surgery. Category 2, conservative and minimal invasion. Category 3, definitely minimal invasion, may progress to a little advanced surgical stages. Category 4 and 5 requires surgery. So we are clear on where to go for conservative management and where to go for surgical interventions or at least minimally invasive interventions. Now, when we talk about conservative modalities, I talk about, start talking about medication. We cannot talk about the full scope of medication here. This is the separate set of lecture altogether, but let us just take an example of a drug or two and let us understand what is required for TMDs. And it is, I am very happy about it that it has already started to happen at most places. Now we, from aimless conservative therapy, we are progressing towards targeted conservative management for TMD. How? See, now we understand that there is a fine equilibrium within the joint. You have matrix metalloproteinases, which are kind of degrading proteins in the joint, and you have tissue inhibitors of matrix metalloproteinases, TIMPs, which kind of maintains or builds the joint, and there's a constant remodeling which keeps happening within the joint, and there has to be a very fine equilibrium between these two mechanisms. In case due to any reason you have MMPs or the matrix metalloproteinases which supersedes the aim of TIMPs within the joint, you will have altered equilibrium. At least we've come to this level that we understand this. And once all this happens, you see this in this diagram that TMJ overloading, you have hypoxia which develops within the joint, and you have upregulation of MMPs and downregulation of TIMPs within the joint. Now, when I talk about targeted therapies, which was already established for other joint diseases, you see that few commonly named NSAIDs, including indomethacin, naproxen, and these drugs, they are NSAIDs which also help in down regulation of MMPs and kind of upregulation of TIMPs when you have the disturbed balance. So when you want to prescribe a medication, now at centers who understand this disease well, you see that they are going on to more orthopedic style of management with the drugs which would benefit the joint more. Otherwise, you definitely have n number of NSAIDs and other drugs available in the market which can be blindly prescribed for pain. Let us move on to occlusal appliance therapy, otherwise commonly referred to as occlusal splint therapy or occlusal device. Now, when we define it, it is a removable artificial occlusal surface which affects the relationship of the mandible and maxilla and is used for diagnosis in therapy. Let us understand a little bit about this. When we are dealing with TMDs, and a splint has to be used, I'm not saying where to use, how to use, on whom to use, but when a splint has to, we should have a basic understanding that the splint therapy is not a well understood science as yet. What we understand is it decreases the joint loading on TMJs and it reduces the neuromuscular reflex activity. There are two types of splints in general: the stabilization splints or the flat plane splints, and the anterior repositioning splints, which are indicated for TMDs. When we talk about stabilization splints, just understand that it is more for a myogenous origin of pain which is extra-articular. When we talk in terms of anterior repositioning splints, it is indicated for structural change which has happened between condyle disc fossa relationship. So when we talk about internal derangement disorders and you want to try and correct this, this is the choice of splint. In case you suspect myogenous origin of pain which is extra-articular in origin, you go for flat planes. This is another most talked about splint, anti-ITSS splint, otherwise called as nociceptive trigeminal inhibition tension suppression system. This splint is actually very smaller than the name itself. It covers only a few of the upper anteriors, maybe 2 to 4 of the incisors, and it's a button which keeps the mouth in slightly anterior open bite. And this actually, if we go by literature, it is only useful for myogenic origin of pain. It's also indicated for bruxism and tension headaches, but definitely not for pain of arthrogenous origin. Now, soft splints. There's a lot of debate about hard splint, soft splint, hard splint, soft splint. Now, current indications, if you go by literature, soft splints are indicated, one, for bruxism as night guards and to prevent the dental structures and the joint loading, and second is post surgical intervention or even after minimal interventions when you want to reduce the joint loading. This is the splint of choice. Now, again, we cannot go into too many details of the splints because we do not understand splints. We see Glenn T. Clark, who says it works on various theories: restoration of vertical dimension theory, TMJ repositioning theory, occlusal disengagement theory, cognitive awareness theory, and maxillomandibular ailment theory. And you see that Okeson has classified splints into so many types, Dawson classifies into so many types, and eventually we actually try and get confused with where to use what. But in general, what we spoke about today is the summary on splints. Now, if I want to quote Professor Anthony Pogrill on this, which he has contributed in one of the volumes we edited, that the philosophy on the diagnosis and management of temporomandibular joint problems have evolved over years, and the problems are now not considered to be primarily concerned with the occlusion or the art of gynecology, but more a biological problem aligned to problems occurring in and around other joint in the body. So when you start thinking in terms of TMDs and your TMD specialist, you are an orthopedic specialist to the temporomandibular joint. Consider yourself that. To start with, quick review on arthrocentesis and scopy and these interventions. Arthrocentesis basically should be utilized as the first line procedure for minimally intervention in TMDs. It basically has works by lysis and lavage within the joint spaces and involves irrigation of the joint to get rid of some amount of inflammatory mediators which may build up within the joint. Now, when I talk about the mechanism, it creates a kind of high hydraulic pressure within the physiological limits in the upper joint space usually, and washes off the mediators of inflammation and gives an attempt to the structures to realign them to the normal functioning anatomy. Now, when we talk about arthrocentesis, initially we did not go into so many details of it, but now we know that this itself has got its clear indications. You have symptomatic internal derangement where you want to give relief to the patient, you want to intervene with this. You have acute lock cases, you have subacute lock cases, anchored disc phenomenon, trauma with chronic pain, capsulitis and retrodiscitis, painful degenerative diseases to give symptomatic relief by washing off mediators, and patients who actually reject other modalities of treatment. This can be attempted as it is of minimal invasion. So you know the indications, right? This is the simplest procedure which can be performed. There are definitely some contraindications to it which should be read through. Now, if I take a scenario like this, you have a patient reporting to you, gives a history of click. One fine morning, the patient wakes up, says, I got a stuck joint, I cannot open my mouth to my full extent, and it is very painful on one side, and I had the click on the side. You have the diagnosis to yourself. In case you want to confirm the diagnosis, you definitely subject the patient to MRI, and you see that the disc which was reducing at an instance, it has become a non-reducing disc, and this is the time when you have caught the patient right here. Do something. What is done usually is this, as we already discussed: bombard the patient with analgesics and a lot of muscle relaxants. No, you know there is a loss of balance or disharmony within the joint. Relieve the disharmony. What is documented now is, if there is early recognition and appropriate treatment, in most cases just simple joint lavage at this point of time would relieve this problem, and patient would become symptom free, and at least the disc displacement without reduction will go back to the situation of disc displacement with reduction. Patient will have happy mouth opening, which is painless, and that is what all of us want. Now, in this smallest signs of TMDs, I see a lot of advancements. You have single puncture arthrosynthesis, you have double puncture arthrosynthesis. The single puncture is further divided into single needle cannula and single puncture, and eventually what was so difficult by aligning two needles together within the small joint space has been simplified to a procedure. We just have to give a single prick. This was initially what we used to do. We used to combine two Venflon cannulas and then give a single prick. One was the inflow port, one was the outflow port, and this is how we used to do arthrosynthesis in our initial days. Now we have a sophisticated system to total mandibular joint wash or arthrosynthesis. Now what we do is, you have a needle with which you can pick up, and it has got an inflow port and an outflow port. You have to hold it correct, identify point A as described, and then eventually enter. Feel the dip to the capsule. As you feel the dip to the capsule, orient your needle right, which should be from downwards to upwards, and then you just give a wash. So even the procedures which were complicated at one point of time and had lack of indications now have a better indication which is enlisted, and you have the simplest of techniques which are available. Now in literature, documentation is with using pumps, mechanized pumps to do this irrigation. Now I am a little skeptical about it, because if the pressure exceeds, you may have pressure injuries to the delicate structures of the joint. So what is recommended in case you have this facility, you limit the pressure to 40 kilopascals. Now people have combined the use of pharmacological agents with arthrosynthesis, but when I reviewed this literature in person, there is no single pharmacological agent which has shown any superiority over other in randomized controlled trial settings. So just do a good lavage would work equally well. Now Dr. Florencio is there with us. He is a fantastic surgeon who is doing a lot of work with minimal interventions with the temporomandibular joint. He will take you through the journey of arthroscopy. Now when I see arthroscopy, the first thing which a learner should understand is the arthroscopic anatomy of the temporomandibular joint, because this is where you start from, and it is very different from a cross-sectional anatomy or the actual cadaveric anatomy which you actually see in a patient. So you have to start learning from the anatomy. Now it is established that these minimally invasive temporomandibular joint surgical procedures are a reliable method of treatment, provided done for a right indication at a right point of time. Now I just give this example. This was a male patient reported to me maybe 3 years back, and then eventually I diagnosed him with disc displacement without reduction. He did not want any intervention at that point of time. He consulted another of my colleague who was a little conservative TMD specialist, and he was put on splint therapy for eventually 2 years time. 2 years is a long time for a splint therapy to work. And then we MRI'd the patient. Once we MRI'd the patient, we saw that disc was folded and somewhere lying much anterior. So we planned for diagnostic arthroscopy at this stage, considering I was suspecting perforation in the retrodiscal or the discal areas. Now what we did was, we did introduce the scope in the joint. Once we introduced the scope in the joint, you would be surprised to see the changes. The entire joint was full of adhesions, the woolly fibers which you see within the joint, and the small capillaries which are present in the synovium almost looked like big vasculature in the joint with so much of synovitis and adhesion. So when you have a problem like that, definitely do not leave the patient on conservative modalities. Intervene at the right stage of time, right point of time, to prevent such drastic changes within the joint cavity. You see these vessels, they are actually tiny, very tiny vasculature. At times you don't see them when you have a healthy joint, but in synovitis you actually see some amount of capillaries with iron gauge, but these are too big for that. So when you have a disc displacement procedure, now we also have Dr. Andrew Sidebottom, who would be highlighting more on displacement reduction and open joint procedures. So you do either arthroscopic way, or you have other modalities of open joint surgeries where you want to reduce the retrodiscal areas and you want to reposition the disc back into its relatively normal position, so that the patient has good mouth opening, that is function, and second, patient goes back to asymptomatic levels or is otherwise pain free. You have n number of procedures like proposed by Mehra and Wolford, where they started using small mitic anchors to anchor the disc back into position, and so forth and so on. A lot of modalities like this. Jumping on to hypermobility disorders. Now we understand that hypermobility disorder, the problem was this, as we already noticed before. The radiographs looked something like this, where the condyle jumps much ahead of the eminence. Let us not go into details of how further ahead and all. Patient is symptomatic. You have a scenario like this, definitely it is a case of subluxation, when patients self opening and closing the mouth. You may have bony changes, you may have changes in the ligaments retrodiscal area where you want to intervene and do something. So suppose you take an example of this patient. Patient is opening and closing the mouth, and suddenly what exactly happens is this. Patient has a stuck joint. Definitely by clinical experience we can say that the patient is trying to open close the mouth, patient subluxates considering the kind of mouth opening he has got, and the condyle gets stuck anterior to the eminence somewhere, and patient unable to close, and he self manipulates and closes the mouth. Yet another patient, look at this, she tries to open the mouth and the condyle jumps out. Yet again she tries to open the mouth, look at her facial expressions, and when she tries to close, after the jumped condyle goes back, she has excruciating pain. Definitely these are subluxation, chronic subluxation disorders. You do not start treating internal derangement in such patients. What is advised is minimally invasion and surgical interventions. Minimal invasion, what is documented is botulinum toxin, autogenous blood injections, prolotherapy, and other surgical procedures. Now in my experience, some amount of prolotherapy with various agents, let us not even go into the details of the agents, has worked well for these patients. In milder cases, if you have severe scenarios like the patient number 1, definitely you need to intervene with some kind of surgical procedure. What is commonly practiced is either you do some kind of anchoring procedures, you tighten the ligaments around, you do some kind of a blocking procedure, you want to put a graft or a plate, or you want to down fracture amount of bone, or otherwise you want to eliminate the interferences by maybe doing a eminectomy procedure. So this is one classical radiographic image which I found, where you see a classic Daughtry's procedure being done for subluxation or a hypermobility disorder, with the arch is down fractured in front of the condyle so that the condyle may not translate beyond this range. Now for these kind of problems also, you do have procedures with mitic screws. You have open joint procedures where you want to remove a portion of the retrodiscal area and then maybe shorten the entire length of the system which moves along with the disc, and you may want to fix up some anchors to hinge this backward so that the condyle does not translate, or otherwise one of the references which I quote from India is where we do not actually commonly get mitic anchors, they fix orthodontic mini screws and make this entire complex into one unit so that there is no interference with movement. Last but not the least, if the joint is irreparable, a scenario something like this, or a scenario like this where the patient has entered the end stage joint disease, you definitely want to replace and rehabilitate the entire system. Now again, Dr. Andrew would take this forward from here, that how to go about doing these TJR systems. So but these systems do work very well. again for the right indication and when intervened for a right type of a case. I quote this every time.
Dr. Darpan, we are exceeding our time limit. Can we please hurry up with your presentation, if
Yes,
you don't
we are
mind? Yeah.
off with 2 more slides. So
Yeah.
now I quote this again, Wolford and Dr. Mercury, that they already quote 20-year follow-up study with these devices and they do really well. Again, Dr. Sidebottom, where we see in childhood you really want to think about growth and want to think about other options, but in adult cases TJRs are the option for total joint replacement surgeries. With that, any questions can be directed to my mail, which we may not find time here. Enjoy your joints. Further suggested reading is definitely by Dr. Daniel M. Lasking, The Evidence-Based Approach to Diagnosis and Treatment, and also one of the short manuals which we have compiled for easy reading on temporomandibular joint disorders. Along with that, in case someone is more interested to learn about TMJs, we do have an online fellowship program which is WDC recognized and also has modules from Royal College of Surgeons of Edinburgh, which can be offered for further learning. We do have Professor Pogrel, Professor Neelkandan and I as project director to this, and Professor Mercury, who is the chief academic advisor, and Dr. Suzy, who is the chair for selection for this program. This is a very tough program actually to take it forward. It is not an easy. Here I want to really quote Professor Mercury at this stage, that what he has contributed to our manual, that reviewing the history of the management of TMJ disorders not only addresses the complexity of the problem, but also demonstrates the importance of being aware of prior pitfalls. This is very important, the prior pitfalls, so that as the science of diagnosis and management unfold, we as clinicians and researchers do not continue to fall into or repeat the shortcomings of the past in the future. This is very, very important. Thank you on this. Thank you, Dr. Taranjeet, for the time, and sorry for exceeding the time a little bit additional to what was required. Thank you. Thanks a lot for patient listening.
Thank you so much, Dr. Darpan. Your presentation answered a lot of our questions, and I'm sure there are so many new questions which our audience have come up with, thanks to the fact that we have understood TMDs a little better than what we had prior to the presentation. Our next